So God created mankind in his own image. In the image of God, he created them. This Bible quote is the first thing that comes to mind whenever I find myself watching the news about all these shocking scandals, like the Epstein case or the Diddy case. I stop and ask myself, were we really made in God's image? How could beings created in his image be capable of committing such horrific acts? In the middle of all this questioning, another thought came to me, one I found interesting enough to share with you. What if we had access to that same level of power? Would we end up doing the same? Before I go any further, I want to make a quick disclaimer. At no point am I trying to justify or excuse any of the disgusting actions committed by deeply corrupted individuals like these. I just want to share a different perspective, something I caught myself thinking about. Do you think that if you had access to an absurd amount of power and resources, it could eventually blind and corrupt you in some way? Or even just being exposed to an environment where immoral or even criminal behavior happens all the time, as if it were completely normal.
The Sith rely on their passion for their strength. They think inwards, only about themselves.
I'm the Jedi damned.
Couldn't that lead you as a human being to normalize it too, and eventually take part in it? Take Tuco Salamanca, for example.
Tight,
Do you think he was born that way? That from the moment he came out of his mother's womb, he was already a ruthless, unstable psychopath, someone capable of killing one of his own men just for saying the wrong thing on a bad day? You get what I'm saying? Here's a personal example that might help explain my point. Don't worry, it's nothing criminal. I believe many of you may have gone through something similar. I was raised in a Christian home. My mother is a devoted follower of Christ, a woman who went through serious financial hardship in her childhood. She had to work from a very young age to help raise her siblings, and she didn't have the time or opportunity to study. Just to give you some context, my family and I come from a third world country, a place where life is harder and opportunities are more limited, especially back when my mother was growing up. Because of that, she always taught me the importance of education and raised me according to God's teachings. But when I started going to school, I was exposed to all kinds of people and ended up making some friends. These friends would swear a lot, something my mother always taught me not to do, since it's considered wrong and sinful. Instead of paying attention in class or doing their assignments, they were always talking and slacking off. In other words, not the best influences. Being exposed to that environment every day, I slowly started to normalize those behaviors. Little by little, I began doing the same things they did. Before I realized it, I'd become just like them. I let myself be carried away by the herd mentality. I adapted to the environment, something closely tied to social pressure and fear of rejection. I remember thinking that group was the coolest thing ever at the time, just like I allowed myself to be influenced and, in a way, corrupted. And I believe many people have gone through something similar. I ask you this: what guarantees that we wouldn't be blinded by power, that we wouldn't be consumed by ego, or even develop some kind of God complex? With all that power and influence, wouldn't we end up just as morally compromised as those individuals? Some people argue that all of us are naturally corruptible, that it's part of being human. Others believe corruption is simply a product of the environment a person is in, and that leads me to another question. What really causes human corruption? What makes us so easily corruptible? What drives people to commit such acts? According to the dictionary, corruption is the use of illegal or unethical means to gain privileged advantages for personal benefit. In simple terms, abusing power or influence for personal gain. For example, imagine receiving too much change after making a purchase. Instead of doing the right thing and pointing out the mistake, the person chooses to stay quiet and benefit from it. They have the power, the knowledge of the error, but instead of correcting it, they take advantage of it. Do you see how corruption exists even in small everyday actions that many people consider harmless? Other interesting examples include the corruption of Satan. Once one of the most beautiful and important angels, he allowed himself to be consumed by pride and ego, which led him to rebel against God and ultimately be cast out of heaven. We also have Adam, who, even knowing he shouldn't eat the forbidden fruit, allowed himself to be influenced. He chose to follow his wife instead of obeying God. The motivations behind corruption can vary: pride, fear, influence. Personally, I think human beings are extremely susceptible to corruption, and that when faced with power, we can easily lose our way. But what do you think?